Hey, what's happening? Jeff Pish here. We have a special guest today, my dude, Dave Mattock. Welcome to the studio. We're going to chat about some different things, and let's get to it. The basics. You're Dave Mattock.
Yes, I am.
Do you call yourself an organ player or a keyboard player?
Well,
as
nice.
far as a definitive, if you even define it,
I think of myself as an organ player.
Okay, yeah.
More than anything else.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it definitely pigeonholes me with a lot of people. So I tend to advertise myself as a keyboardist or a pianist.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But your mindset is I'm organ.
It's my first love is the organ. It's the thing that I enjoy playing the most, the thing that I feel the most at home at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think mostly about the organ.
Yeah. Cool. Where'd you grow up?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, Hollis, New Hampshire.
Hollis, New Hampshire. What happens in Hollis, New Hampshire? Anything?
Not much. It's a wonderful, beautiful little farm town.
Organ player mecca.
Yeah, 100%. There's when I grew up there was still no red light in the entire town.
Wow.
And there were no stores, like chain stores, nothing like that in the entire place.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool though.
That was wonderful. It's a great place. My parents still live there.
And, right on.
Yeah. Still go up there to visit, but it's not a place to be a musician.
Yeah.
Not a place to live in now.
Gotcha. Well, let's start with, when did you start playing music?
I started piano lessons when I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
and I quit by the time I think I was 10. I hated it. It was terrible.
Yes.
And then I revisited it again, like towards the end of junior high. A friend of mine got me involved in the band.
Okay.
I could play, because I could play a little bit of piano. They put me on the bells in the band.
Yes.
Because I understood the keys. So
you're a percussionist.
I'm
also.
a percussionist.
How about
Yeah,
that?
exactly. So I started doing that, and in high school I ended up playing more percussion stuff. And while I was in the band, the bass player in the group, or the tuba player in the group, told me about a piano teacher that he had been working with for theory. A guy named Rolly Belial, and he was a stride piano player. So he was already in his 70s at that point.
Nice.
And I went up and I met with him, and he was just like the ultimate piano teacher, just the most joyful, wonderful person you've ever met.
Cool.
Just amazing, wonderful piano player. And I ended up taking lessons with him for all through high school. And that eventually led to me taking lessons with somebody at New England Conservatory while I was still in high school. So I studied with a guy by the name of Aaron Katzenelnbogin.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, right? Ronnie, thankfully, he called himself. And he hit me to the more modern, like kind of the newer ideas with stuff. He was showing me things that were really going on, like in the 90s in the jazz community and whatnot. And he got me kind of on the path towards possibly being a musician. So
Cool.
Yeah.
So when did organ come around?
Let me think about that. So I moved to Philly in 99 to go to school. And I eventually became part of the jazz department at Temple. And while I was there, it was just kind of around. I liked the instrument. I always knew I liked that instrument, but I didn't know much about it. But Philly was, especially then, was just like such an organ town. There were so many organ players, and it was just kind of everywhere. You could go to Bob and Barbara's, you could go to a couple of different venues, and I was watching people play, and so I started to learn how to do it. And when did it happen? Sometime while I was in like my undergrad, I got on the phone with a guy by the name of Rich Budessa, who's a local player.
Yeah,
you know Rich. Yeah, Rich is amazing, right?
Absolutely.
Wonderful organ player, wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And he hit me to like the world of organ, like just told me the whole thing. It just got me kind of into it, showed me a few things, and then I just started playing. I just got a hold of like a total piece of junk. Like one, I literally had a single keyboard that I then midied into some piece of junk keyboard that I found. When I say junk, I mean it came out of the trash. It came out of the dumpster at Temple, and it was just an old keyboard they were throwing out. And I midied that together, and that was my organ rig for years. Wow. I played on that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, my first gigs were all on that. So that would have been like early 2000s I started doing that.
Okay.
And I studied I worked on that for a long time. So.
Nice. And then, so you went to Temple, obviously. You graduated from Temple? Music?
Yep. Performance. Yeah, piano.
Cool.
Yep.
When did you graduate from Temple?
03.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, so now you're teaching a lot while you're running a school. how did that come about? I mean, I'm sure you taught private lessons, you know, a typical deal. And
oh, yeah, we all have done it. We've all taught private lessons, yeah.
You decided, you know what, I'm going to make a whole school.
I might have to back up a little bit to get to that. There's a decade in between. I went to grad school thinking that I was going to be a college professor.
Okay.
You know, and we all know that that's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
But I was an academic. I loved the idea. The whole thing was great for me. So I went into school to do that. Mm-hmm. And somewhere during that process, I realized that there was no way that I was going to continue all the way through the PhD and, you know, move to some small school out in the Midwest or something like that. I decided it would be a bad idea. So I was already teaching a ton. I was already teaching adjunct stuff a lot. I was already teaching lessons a lot. I was teaching at UPenn, teaching private piano. And my wife and I were thinking about moving out of the city. So I was thinking more and more about like the practicality of doing that. Okay. And I like teaching. I've never disliked it. It wasn't just like a fallback. I really love teaching private lessons. Yeah. And we moved specifically out of the city, out of Philadelphia, to open up a school.
Wow.
And it started pretty small, just me teaching out of an in-law suite at my house. Mm-hmm. And it has since grown to now I own a building that has, 15 teachers and 170 students.
Wow. Man, I didn't know that.
It's
that big. That's awesome.
It's pretty big, yeah. There's, lots of different rooms and spaces and all kinds of different. We do a million different things there now. So
neat. And I'm going to drop a link in the description to the Mattock School of Music so you can check it out.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right.
Absolutely. Dude, that's wild. So you've been gigging for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of what current projects would you consider that you have going on right now? I mean, you have probably a couple of set gigs. Like I know you have a solo thing that you do, but then you also have a variety of
vibes
I do a lot of different things that you got going on. So what's kind of your current gigging setup?
I'm a piano player, so I get to do all kinds of piano players have it kind of easy that way. We get to do lots of different things. We do solo bar gigs or cocktail hours or whatever. I mean, so that's the work that is super fun to have and to do, and it's it's a gig. Yeah. That's probably the only piano playing that I do is that. I don't
stuff. Yeah, cool.
Basically, yeah. And then I'm in a couple of different random projects. There's some wedding bands that call me and stuff like that, and I work with a Dave Matthews tribute act that's super fun and really good, and that's it's cool. It's it's a gig.
Yeah.
But as far as projects that I'm really proud of that I kind of stand behind a little bit, I almost always work in a trio setting, usually guitar, drums, and organ, and those gigs I'm always pushing that kind of stuff. So I've released, I've done 3 albums and I'm about to release a 4th, and I think I have 7 more in my head that I'm ready to get out. I'm constantly thinking about that. I'm constantly doing things like that.
And all that stuff's on Spotify and everything like that.
It's all under my name. Yep.
I'll put some links and you can check out all Dave's music.
Yeah. So I like to approach, especially because I play a lot of jazz. I mean, that's basically what I'm doing. But I really love writing jazz in a more specific kind of. I like to kind of narrow things down. So the last record I did was kind of a throwback to what I consider the the golden era of organ groups, right? So in that case, I had 3 horn players, drums, and organ, and that band was written like a 60s post-bop group, and that's all I wanted it to be, and that's exactly what it is, right?
Cool. Yeah.
I'm working on a project right now that's fully recorded, and it's getting mixed, and hopefully it'll come out this year. That's much more modern. It's more fusion-y, more progressive, kind of currently what I think of as kind of a current view of what jazz is, and that's a trio record that I'm doing right now. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm a drummer, so a lot of the content that I'm putting out is drummer focused.
Yep.
Percussion and drum focused. One thing that it's ever since I've met you. I mean, we've only known each other a couple of years at this point, but one thing that I noticed right off the bat with you is you have great drummers in everything that you do. And that stuck out to me. That was one of the things.
That's sad that would stick out to you.
I mean, your playing is fantastic as well.
I mean it in the sense that why would? Of course I would. I would have the best possible foundation for my band at all times.
You would think that that's the norm. Like the way you explain that, and the way I think of it as well is like, well, you just want the best guys to be on the gigs. And so, but that's one thing that hit me. Like any gig that I've come to see you, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna learn something. I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna watch Eric. I'm gonna watch Josh. I'm gonna watch these guys and get something really cool out of it. So what, with that in mind, what's your approach when, just thinking about the drummer? Mm-hmm. What's your approach in selecting a drummer for a gig? It's, of course, hey, they're available, cool. Right. But obviously you've taken the time to find guys that are going to fit for you. So there's obviously something in your head as a performer that you want, there's a specific connection that you're going to want with the drummer that you're working with. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're pretty particular about that. Sure.
First of all, I am lucky enough to be able to do this because Philadelphia is just an amazing city for drummers. There's just a lot of really good ones. There's there's a whole lineage of them. It's just amazing. Like it's a great place to work, and I happen to have gone to a school where I've met a lot of great drummers. So I've gotten to work with a lot of great ones. As far as picking them, it used to be versatility. As an organ player, I might play a swing tune and a funk tune and a Latin tune and whatever. You name all the different genres. It's like, all right, you need to know every single beat, and you need to be at least more than proficient at all of them. Because I'm going to turn on a dime at any point. Because these gigs are, organ gigs are funny. They're not. They live somewhere between art and social.
Right.
And so because of that, you have to be able to both, you have to be able to keep people's minds interested, and you also have to be able to keep them, danceable in some capacity. Yeah. So there's a lot of variation there for the drummers in particular, right? The other thing I'm looking for is somebody who's confident enough that they're not waiting for me the whole time. Yeah. That's a huge thing. A lot of drummers they're watching me. They're waiting to see what I do, and it's like I need an equal partner in this because in a lot of ways it's the two of us, and then there's the third guy. Yeah. Obviously harmonically, I might be working with the guitar player and focusing on those things and thinking about melodies and whatnot. But in so many ways, the foundation is laid by the two of us. I need somebody who is going to step up and just assert themselves at all times. Yeah. Really confident drummers are surprisingly difficult to find.
Yes.
So,
truth.
And there's something for that, So that's one side of it. As time's gone on, what I've come to realize is that I don't need the versatility quite as much as I used to, because I've started to maybe focus my gigs a little bit more. So I might be looking for somebody who can really they can be versatile, but they can do a couple of things really, really well. And then sometimes I'll just build the gig around that. Cool. If I have a show coming up that's, I'm like, who's available? Well, this guy's available. Great. I'm going to tailor everything we're going to do to his strengths. Let's make them the best thing they can be, because once the drummer's killing it, the gigs are easy. They're fun, and everybody's, we're ready to go then. So
see, the drums are the king of everything.
They are.
Yep. No, that's awesome. That's cool. I've gotten to play with you a couple of times, and each time it's just always been, for me, it's always a huge challenge. It's funny.
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. It's good for me. It's humbling and it's excellent. Like I remember the first time we ever got together at your place to rehearse and play through some things, and it may have been the first time we met in person. I think.
Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
So I was already nervous because I'm socially awkward to begin with, and then I'm walking to this organ trio thing, and I'm like, let's see what happens. Yeah. Then I remember you saying to me, we had played a bit, and you knew that we could probably do something, but you also knew that I wasn't confident, certainly at that time, and what was great was you were assertive and told me. Okay. And you were like, hey, organ trio thing, it's okay to push. Like sit on top of the tempo and and drive it don't necessarily basically wait for me and react.
Right.
Be proactive in the time.
Yeah.
And that was huge for me. Like that was a great lesson I had, just like being at your place, like jamming and trying to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much interaction. I mean, because I guess a lot of drummers are looking at it from, they're used to playing with a harmonic instrument and a bass player, and which is fantastic because then they can focus on one or the other or maybe both at the same time. But whenever the organ player is doing their thing, to be perfectly honest, sometimes the organ player needs a little bit of help too. Like, we got a lot going on here, you know. Like, sure. And there's you know, it's just a different thing where there's now 2 people instead of 3 people creating this, you know, this whole background for whatever the lead is for the moment. You know what I mean? And sometimes the organ player is trying to play the lead line too, and it's like they got the bass line going and the groove's got to happen, and there's just a lot going on at once. And it's the challenge of playing the instrument. It's one of the things I love the most about it. But it also is one of those things where that's fine for a song or two to carry everything, but over 3 or 4 hours, which is what we're playing, right? These gigs are so long. You kind of need, you know, you need somebody you need a partner whenever it comes to these things. So
that's awesome. Cool. Who are some of your favorite people to gig with?
Ha! You want me to name people?
Yeah, let's have it.
Jeff Piscitello?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got my local guys that I always call. You know, Jason Herman and Josh Orlando have been kind of my working trio for all the more progressive stuff that I've done over the years. Like that's been a group for a long time. And I've known Josh since over 20 years now. I've been playing with him.
Monster.
Ridiculous, right? The man is just, I call him a human octopus. His sense of time is like unreal. And a wonderful guy. Like, that's the other thing is, cool. Organ trios are, you know, I mean, like any band, you want to be friends with people. And these guys are my friends. They're good people, and I love being around them anyways. So they're great. Greg Kettinger was a guitar player I worked with. He was a mentor of mine in college. Just a limitless musician. Just amazing. And another
super cool guy.
Super cool guy. I mean, you know, the gig gets canceled, it's like, yes, I get to hang out with Greg. I feel bad. I wouldn't want to leave anybody out. You know, the horn players that I work with all the time, Tyrone Fredericks, Marcel Bellinger, John Katz. Those guys are, you know, 3 guys I've worked with a lot lately. I've known them for a long time, and they're just wonderful horn players. Jason Klinke is my he's the guitar player I've worked with the longest. It's just an absolute one of my favorites. You know, so these are, you know, the guys I work with most these days, at least. And it's kind of nice too, like, you know, kind of goes back to you're at a point now, especially now, like where you can curate whatever you want out of who you want to play with, you know, what gigs you're going to take. And, you know, so you have that luxury of like, you know what? I love these dudes. They're going to be on the gig. They're going to play great. We're going to have a really good time. And that's a beautiful thing. I don't ever feel like you're in a position where you're like scrambling to just fill a spot, you know, these days. Well,
you know,
sometimes I mean, I'm sure it comes up once in a while. But, but you also have a pretty deep bench. Yes. Oh, I mean, like I said before about the drummers, it's the same thing with all the musicians. I mean, this area is, there's so many of them. I mean, it's a luxury, you know. If I tape saxophone into my phone, I mean, it's like 30 guys show up, you know. 29 of them I like. Exactly. And that's beautiful. It's a really amazing thing, you know. And like I said, I get to, sometimes I choose to, so I'm lucky I have these regular gigs. Like I have monthlies at a couple of places, and it's great because just whenever I start to burn out on whatever I'm doing, I could just as easily just turn it on its head. Say, well, I've done too many of those in a row. I need something different, and I'm going to get a different group of guys, and that different group of guys will change everything for me. They'll redefine where I go. Maybe I've even played the same material, but now it's a whole different way. So, that's awesome. And a lot of the musicians I work with, I've now been working with long enough that they know my book well enough that I also have that kind of stability where I can count on them to, you know, when I need to. There's like songs I already know. It's not like I'm doing it fresh every time. There's no rehearsals involved. There's no like prepping for it. They've done these things, you know. And they know what's happening. And, you know. And I'm also lucky to work with guys who are all formally educated and that they can all read. And it's like, you know, kind of gone by the wayside in some ways, but I love being able to show up and hand somebody a chart.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like, it's a nice feeling to know that it can be done even if you don't have to the whole night.
Yeah. So. Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I like to read. Like I think it's a good.
We learned how to do it. Let's use it.
Right.
What? There's nothing wrong with that. You can make great music with it. I think it was Matt Davis, the guitar player. Do you know Matt?
No. I don't
so
know
he's a little older than me. He went through Temple. Amazing musician, just phenomenal. He a few years back, I remember he put up a post about how he had kind of maybe rethought his ideas of like, everybody memorizes everything,
right? And
you don't play the tune unless you've got it in your head and this and that. And he was like, I have been finding that I'm playing music, I'm reading charts again, and I'm finding that I'm actually playing them very differently, and I'm like accessing them maybe in a better way.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just an interesting turn, perspective.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I was going to point out another thing. I wanted to mention this one because I didn't get to mention his name earlier. A good friend of mine, Matt Smallcombe, is a drummer I've worked with. Again, long time. Remarkable musician. He lives in New York, so I never get to see him. I never get to see him anymore. Yeah. I don't get to work with him much anymore. But we used to talk a lot about whenever he would go down to the 55 bar.
Okay. Yeah.
And he said the most remarkable thing about watching those gigs was walking in Wayne Krantz every week after week, Tuesday after Tuesday for years. Mm-hmm. Walk in and he would just throw down charts. And if you've ever listened to his music, these are not easy tunes.
Right.
That he is just, really asking a lot of his band week after week. Every time he would just come in and they would just read these charts. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about it was like the spontaneity, the chaos that would come from like great musicians, but still reading challenging music and having to figure it out. And then, the beauty of like what would come out of that.
Yeah,
those recordings of those days are just remarkable, And I remember that was really inspiring. And he used to say like, yeah, man, like I'll come down, just bring charts. I'll just read them that night. Yeah. And we would do it. And we would do whole gigs that way with just brand new material. Yeah, and it really inspired me to write a lot.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I would have people who were willing to take it on. Like, here's new material. Every time I see you, you have a new song to play. Yeah. And you have to do it on the gig.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know musicians, anyone who finds out I'm a musician, their first question is, "Oh, who's your favorite band?" You know what I mean? And it's, I don't know, like it's the guy I'm listening to. I listen to this band today, and I'm going to listen to 10 different bands tomorrow, and I don't know. But so right now in your bubble, what are you listening to?
Oh, currently?
Yeah.
Oh man, God, I've been in such a weird funk lately, trying to find things that I would be happy about. Yeah, it's been such a hodgepodge. I love that Ojos de Brujas.
Ojos de Brujas.
De Brujas.
Yeah.
Man, that first time I turned that on, I couldn't get enough of that. That that first groove just about took my head off.
It's killer.
Oh my God, it's amazing. I've listened to everything to the point where I had to turn it off because I was hearing it in my sleep.
Oh, good.
That like modern flamenco thing is wild. Very, very cool.
It's neat.
Man, what else have I been checking out lately? To be honest, I've been having a hard time finding modern things that I've been interested in lately. Yeah. I've been really reverting back to a lot of classical music.
Yeah, cool.
So, which has been a nice change for me,
Yeah.
It's a lot of things like that, Last year I went through a phase where I don't know what came over us, but my wife and I bought season tickets to the symphony.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember you go to the concerts all the time.
So I said for 20 years that I was like, I can't wait to go to the symphony. I never went. And then we went 16 times last year. Yeah. It was like a regular thing. We saw all kinds of like modern new stuff, premieres and whatnot. It was just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. It's cool. So, and the other thing is I've been digging deeper and deeper into like those archives of people that I've listened to for years. Like what else is out there? What else did they do that I haven't heard yet?
Yeah, cool.
Jazz musicians that I've loved for forever and trying to find out what else they've been up to.
Nice.
Like the, that organ player on the album that his buddy released in Brooklyn, right. That nobody knows about, So.
Neat.
Yeah.
So, and getting back to the organ track, like who were like your inspirations? Like when you first
when I first started, it was classic. It was all classic rock. It was just Greg Allman and cool. Whatever, all the guys that my dad was listening to. Yeah. All those bands. Just the sound of the instrument, just took me, took me to a whole nother place.
Yeah. Neat.
A little bit of like Booker T and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then I discovered Jimmy Smith, like we all do, and You know, the Blue Note stuff was great. It was like a great way to get into it and find out about what he was up to, and just an entry level to like that grooving, cool sound, right? But what really screwed me up was whenever I stumbled across the stuff that came before that. Okay. Whenever he was a little bit more wild, a little bit more the reason why people were so messed up whenever he came out. So like if you listen to like 1957, okay. I mean, this guy's got his hair lit on fire. He is playing so much so fast. It's like he can't get the ideas out fast enough. Right. There's just so much happening constantly. And I was like, this is what I want to do, you know, which I quickly realized I'll never be able to do. Fair so enough. That, you know, and then, you know, you go through the whole roster of those great organ players from the 60s. I mean, they're all just amazing. Yeah. It's like Patton and, you know, Jimmy McGriff, and Don Patterson, and like all the great early organ players. So, you know, that's a big thing. My biggest influence in that world would be Lonnie Smith.
Yeah, cool.
Who I discovered in the, I don't know, 2005, 6, something like that. I found out about him. And then whenever I started grad school, I went to see him, kind of thinking I want to write about like an organ player, you know, who's still alive and playing, you know, what's around. So I went to see him, and I'd never seen anything like him before. Yeah, he really like destroyed me. And then for 2 years, I spent 2 years studying him with him. Yeah. You know, studying him, learning about him, his history, his playing. I interviewed him like a whole bunch of times, got to spend time with him and his partner. Neat. And, you know, just, I probably know more about Lonnie Smith than most anybody else outside of his family. So huge influence on me, and I still think he's, you know, in so many ways he might be one of the more unique, you know, musicians ever. Maybe a little underrated in the bigger jazz community, but you know, he's amazing. Yeah, no,
it's funny. Like, you know, I play in the organ thing and in the quartet with the sermon, and the more I've learned, the more I've gravitated to Lonnie over anything else that I listen to, you know, in that genre. It's like, man, I just really dig what he had going on.
It's just such a natural extension of who he is. It's just his personality just comes out on the instrument.
That's awesome.
It's he's, you know, a little bit less training, a little bit less formal education, but man, he makes up for it in something else. Yeah, just soul power within it. You know, it's just amazing. So yeah, he's just a uniquely talented musician. Yeah. So neat. Yeah, very cool. You know, and then, you know, coming out of the Philly tradition, of course, Jimmy Smith people always push Jimmy Smith, but really, if you're an organ player and you live in Philly, I mean, Don Patterson, who is not from Philly, but stylistically speaking, he's like kind of I think the perfect version of what a Philly organ player should sound like. Cool. Yep, sounds like, you know, Sonny Stitt, but on organ, just right bebop lines, legit, like single note line stuff. The guy could keep up with anybody, you know, it's just that whole thing. I loved his playing. So I studied with Mike LaDon, and if you don't know who Mike LaDon is,
I don't know.
Oh my God. Yeah, Mike's an active organ player right now. He's, you know, a generation older than I am, but, you know, young-ish and just amazing. Just ridiculous organ player. I studied with him in grad school, and he is just, I mean, the most amazing one. He's an amazing educator, just great person to study with. But his playing is off the charts. Neat. Yeah, you should check him out. Yeah, right on. Yeah, and he hit me to Don Patterson, and he had me transcribing all this stuff and like figuring it all out. You know, like really getting into the details, like that half step should be over here, and that this note should be here, and like really figuring out what really makes all that stuff click. You know, it's fascinating to study Don Patterson, but also to work with a guy like Mike who could figure it out, you know, and hip me to it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
neat. On the lighter side, we got a little deep there. I like it. Well, I mean, if you have any, like, what are your gig pet peeves? Like, you show up for a gig, you know, you got something booked. Like, what's something that's just like, if this isn't this way, this is just going to be really irritating. And
I'm not a big enough person to be able to have pet peeves. I don't get the luxury of that. If my keyboard turns on and the band shows up, I'm pretty happy.
Then it's easy peasy.
We're good, man. Let's play some music. Man, I don't know. I don't think about that very much.
That's a great place to be.
Yeah,
like it's, you know.
I think a little bit is that I've moved out of the world of I have a big problem with simple professionalism.
Yeah.
I don't deal with it much anymore. I've weeded those people out of my life. I don't have to put up with that very much. You know, people showing up late and stuff, not having their material or something like that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't deal with that very often, but that kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do you mean you don't have your chart? What do you mean you forgot that one or you didn't learn that one? You know, like I sent you the thing. Like that kind of stuff bugs me. Yeah. People who don't understand the situation.
Right.
You know, like the drummer who gets mad because somebody tells the band to quiet down. And we're all mad. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes getting told, you know. Nobody likes being told your background music, shut up.
Yeah.
But when they tell you, the guy who doesn't know how to handle it and then does something stupid, like play louder.
Right.
You know, like not understanding how the world works.
Yeah.
You know, that drives me crazy.
Yeah, right on.
So from the musician's point of view, definitely. I have a lot of...
Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, no, nothing really bothers me that much
that's
on
good.
kicks
Well,
anymore.
You know, I mean, that's a good place to be. I mean, you're, you know, like kind of what we talked about before, you've kind of curated what you do and where you do it and with whom you do it. Yeah. So you don't really have to worry about, you know, outside forces in a lot of what you're doing, which is fantastic.
I'm very lucky where I'm at this point. Like I don't deal with that very much.
Yeah.
You know, I run most of the groups that I'm, you know, working with.
Yep.
The ones I'm not, I'm usually getting hired by the guys that I trust to take care of things.
Yeah.
So for
awesome.
the most part, it's a good thing. So no real complaints.
So a majority of what you do as an organist, as a performer, is improvisational. What do you do as far as your approach goes to work on the improvisation side of your playing?
Currently, or that I did in the past?
All of the above.
I mean, this is like a lifelong pursuit. You know? Like,
for sure. And I'm sure your approach currently is much different than, you know, say 10 years ago. You know,
I mean, at the beginning, it's all mechanics and theory and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And there's still some of that going on. I mean, I'm not a natural technician on my instrument, so I've spent a lot of time just maintaining the physical ability to play, you know. It's like I'm not ashamed to admit that.
I understand.
It is what it is. And then there's always something new to learn theoretically or whatever to apply. You know, today for me it's about learning how to expand on melodic ideas. It's like, you know, at some point you realize like there's no more scales to learn. Right. I know all the scales. I know all the different ways to play them. I can play relatively fast. You know, I can do all the things you kind of need to be able to do. So the next step is how does it feel? And does it sing? Does it sound like a melody that someone would want to hear? Doesn't mean it has to be simple or, you know, dumbed down, but at least it's something melodic. And that is a matter of listening on a couple of levels. The first being like listening to myself, hearing myself for real. As a piano player, it's really easy to get locked into the buttons. I hit that thing. I don't even have to hear that thing. I know it's going to come out. I don't have to actually make sure that it comes out right. I don't have to worry about the pitch. I don't have to worry about anything. I just hit the thing and it comes out. If I know that that's an A and it's an F chord, I know it's going to sound fine. So it's really easy to get locked into that and to stop listening on the instrument, I think. So making sure that I'm truly listening to what I'm playing, that I'm hearing what I'm trying to play beforehand, that I'm actually, you know, kind of vocalizing it in some way. And then second, that I'm listening to the other people and hearing and interacting with them, that these ideas of mine aren't just like standalone concepts. Right? Yeah. Just because I came up with the best melody in the world might have nothing to do with what else is happening around me. And so forcing myself to do that is difficult, and it's difficult to do. It's difficult to recreate at home when I'm practicing, to get myself into a headspace where I'm doing that. Listening to records kind of works. They're already playing. I don't know. It doesn't work so well for me. So it's more like trying to like pull myself back from my own instrument and just pretend to listen to things. It's difficult.
No, that's awesome. And you know, I think that's a big deal for musicians to get to the point where you're out of the technical theoretical side of this note works in this chord, this note works in, if I play this line, it's going to fit in that chord. Whereas you just start to open up the picture in a broader sense. And you get to that point where you want to hear what the drums are doing and how you can come up with an interplay with that, whether it could be melodic or rhythmic, with the drums. If the drummer vibes in some kind of cool little tom fill, well, there's a melody there that you could grab from an organ perspective.
I mean,
it
can be as simple as the ride cymbal that you have chosen to play on, for whatever period of time. I mean, that could change my entire perspective on what range of my instrument I'm going to be on.
Cool.
I mean, if all of a sudden it gets brighter and it's in my way, then I need to move. Or if I ignore that, then no one's going to hear what I'm playing anyways.
Interesting. Yeah.
It might change because, as an organ player, I also have a lot of control over my sound. I can change all those drawbars and everything. Right. I can do so much with it. I might have to change the sounds based on what the drummer's doing. If you're really leaning into the toms or you're really leaning into like the rims, well, then I've got to approach it differently. Like I have to approach it sonically in a different way as well. Yeah. That's a big thing, is to interact. One of my Josh, always says, he's like, I'm not a timekeeper. That's not my role. My role is not timekeeper. I'm here for color.
Yeah.
I play sounds, and I'm just as much part of this as you are. And it's a huge, the first time he said that to me, I was like, that's just exactly right. Like, we're all timekeepers.
Yes.
We all have different, we all have different sounds that we're producing, and we all have to keep time, and it really kind of gives you that perspective, like, well, what role am I trying to fill right now?
Right.
Maybe I'm trying to be a timekeeper right now, and that's my what I'm trying to do as I'm improvising.
Yeah.
So there's and then there's the other side of improvising is that we're there's the soloing, there's the lead, but then there's the other part of it, which is whenever you're either accompanying somebody or you're improvising as a group. I mean, we're always improvising.
Right.
I don't really play parts anymore.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Everything's an improvisation in some capacity.
Yeah.
So I love that part. I love trying to find a thing that I can play behind a drummer.
Cool.
Or what am I doing with the guitar player while he's doing whatever he's doing. That part of the improvisation is also really important. So
awesome.
That's what makes the whole song sound good, as opposed to the part where people listen to me.
Right. Fair enough. And I think that's and that's probably one of the great things from the times I've been able to come out and listen to some of your groups, is all the guys you're with, you all have that understanding of big picture.
Yeah.
And finding those moments of interplay, and but it's always just this constantly wavering thing that creates this really interesting stuff constantly. It doesn't ever just get stagnant. Like, nobody in any group I've seen you play in is just gonna sit here and do this.
No,
it's just not. Like,
no.
And the times I've gotten to work with you, I wouldn't be able to do it if I tried. Because of everything else that's going on. With whether we were doing it as a trio with a sax player or with a guitarist.
Yeah.
Like, there's always so much going on in those groups. I don't have a choice. I need to make sure I'm hearing what you guys are doing and get into that interplay as well. And I think it makes it great when you're in it, and it also makes it great when you're sitting watching it too.
Sure.
It's funny. I had Tony DeAngelis, another great drummer, in, and we talked about some things, and I have a hard time going to see people play.
Yeah.
Going to see live music. I struggle because I want to be the one in the chair playing. I never want to just be sitting in a crowd. Like, I have a hard time separating my brain. It's like, hey, I'm just going to go have a beer and check these guys out.
Yeah.
I sit there. I want to learn. I'm going to get something out of it. I'm selfish. I want to, if I'm going to go see somebody, I want to learn something. I want to, be blown away and check stuff out. So, being able to get to see you with some of these guys, Eric Johnson and Josh Orlando, seeing those guys in that realm with you has been a treat. And anytime I get a chance, I don't get out much anymore, ever anyway. But
yeah, right. It's the dilemma of all musicians. Though.
Right,
You never get to hear anybody play.
Exactly. But if I have a night and I see somebody like you, one of your groups is playing, I'm going to try to make an effort and check that out, because I know, even as a guy that just wants to always be in the chair, I'm still going to get something out of this and have a good experience and enjoy the night, seeing, the caliber of musicians and yourself. And
well, thank you.
It's a good time.
I'll let all of them know, all 27 of them.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, it's one of the great things about it is like, it's a constant, it's this beautiful challenge of playing with these great musicians who keep you on your toes, but you learn so much. You walk away so inspired, it's like, musically while you're with them, on the breaks when you're talking to them. Yeah. I mean, take a set break with Eric Johnson. It's like you don't even want to go back to playing him because you're like, I've got to go home and write this down.
Yeah.
This man just like enlightened my everything. I just need time to process what he said on the break. Like it's so much, and then you go play with him and he blows your mind.
It's
on top of all
thing.
That.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
nice, love it. One last quick question. I mean, it may not be quick. Who knows? What's like a crazy, outrageous gig story? It could be like something really terrible, like over the top terrible that happened at a gig, or some kind of unbelievably fulfilling, greatest gig of your life you played, or someone you worked with that was like way over the top. Nothing's popping out.
No, it's funny because I had somebody about 10 years ago, somebody asked me, we were in a group of musicians and somebody was, I don't know if they're interviewing us or something. And they were like, who's the most famous person you ever worked with or something along those lines. What's the biggest gig you ever did? I think was actually the question. And everybody I was with had something awesome to say. It's like Aretha Franklin. Somebody was like, I don't know. It was like all famous people they'd all played with. And I was like, no, nobody. I never played with anybody famous. I've never even been on a big gig. I've never even toured anywhere. I've never done anything. Yeah. And it's funny because at first it really screwed me up. Like I went home kind of feeling like kind of whacked. Like, like is there something wrong with me? Like why have I never done any of those things? And I realized like those are just other gigs. They're just more gigs.
Yeah.
And I've had an incredibly fulfilling, simple version of that. You know, like. We've talked a lot about the like kind of the problem with like getting a little too stuck in your kind of local ways, like, and how that can become a trap very quickly. And so I'm proud to say that I've never really allowed that trap to happen.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to push a little bit farther and whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm also like not worried about the fact that like, it's okay. I haven't toured the world playing big gigs or anything like that.
Right. All right. So we're going to wrap it up. I have one final question from my dude, Dave. And it should be, I mean, I would hope it's a simple one. Why organ?
Oh, like as a choice of an instrument?
Yeah.
It just works for me.
Yeah.
It just always has. The day that I sat down at a real one and got to play it all the limitations I felt on the piano like went away. I didn't know they had been limitations. I didn't realize that I was like kind of hitting a wall all the time. I realized right away that this instrument made sense to me.
Yeah. Like
it really was that quick. I couldn't play it very well, but I could see where what I needed was happening.
Yeah.
So some of it is this kind of, it's kind of ethereal. No, I don't know. Sure, it all clicked, right? Yeah. On another side of it, it's just I think it's just partially there's a physicality to the instrument that makes sense to my background, to my other background, which is in sports.
Yeah.
And there's something about it. There's a coordination level.
Yeah. There's
a physicality to it. There's a little bit of a machoism to it that appealed to me whenever I was younger, and still sometimes today. The instrument is, not everybody can handle that. Like, right. There are definitely piano players who have more technical ability on their instrument, but not everybody can handle splitting their mind.
Yeah.
On the organ. And that actually worked for me almost immediately.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Like very quickly, I was able to figure out how to just do 3 things at once.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I love that. And I just love its power. I just love how we can go from that beautiful, sweet singing thing to this just like, I'm going to take over the room.
Yes.
And everything in between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's my instrument.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, man. I love the piano. I still do, and I play all the keyboards, and I enjoy all of them in many different ways.
Yeah.
I still have a soft spot for playing piano. Like a lot of times piano has become a thing for me alone.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another thing I should mention is that one of the things I really, really like playing music with people.
Yeah.
With people. I like the interaction. I like being in a group of people.
Yeah.
And I find that the organ for me, is the most interactive instrument. Like I'm able to connect with people more that way.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, whereas the piano is more of my solitary instrument that I like to play alone.
Yeah.
So.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So, Dave Mattock, killer musician, great dude. Check him out. I'll throw some links to all his variety of things he's got going on, and you can check him out. And he does have a YouTube account, so we'll link that too. And you know, thanks for stopping by and hanging out.
Thank you for talking to me.
Yeah, no,
Thank
super
you for
fun,
having me
man.
here. This is awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So that wraps us up with Dave. If you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, that'd be great. Really helps things out. And we're going to keep doing these and get some more musicians in here. And it's great learning about everyone's different approaches to things. So thanks again for the support, and we'll catch you on the next one.